So, should you play Omnifactory? I recently started and also finished my first ever playthrough of Omnifactory. This isn't the first pack I've finished, but I want to go over some of the things I enjoyed and some things I think could be improved. Although I will say that I really enjoyed this pack, and the short answer is yes, you definitely should play this pack. Let me explain. So before we go over some of my thoughts about the pack, let's actually finish this off, shall we? I think I ended last episode on around 405 hours played, and we are currently on 471. Now obviously I did not play for all of those hours. This week I was mainly just AFK. I've been really busy, so yeah, a lot of the time was just spent AFK. However, if we take a look at the progress now for Creative Vending, we are just missing one solar panel. This item here is Creative RF, which is in use, and then Creative Mill goes here, which is also in use in world. And then these 4 slots in the middle are for the armor, which I'm wearing. So the final piece of this craft is this solar panel, which I think should be craftable now. So I'll just go over quickly what I changed this week. It's more or less just been more of the same. I added speed upgrades in most of these crafters, and a few more processing arrays in here, just for some things that were quite slow. Added some circuits here, and surprisingly electrum foil as well. And then I also changed up the microminer missions a little bit more, as well as adding many more simulation chambers, mostly for dragon. But yeah, wow, that was fast. So that is our solar panel of infinity, the last one. I have also made sure to draw all the items as well, so all of the creatives are in here. And yeah, I guess all that's left to do now is to gather up the Creative RF and the Creative Mill. So we'll take this, and I wonder how charged this is actually. 1.2%? Yeah, there's no chance we're filling this thing. And our Creative Mill, remember, was on top of our applied energistic stuff. So now that we have all of these items, let's just slot these in and get our vending upgrade, finally, after so long. It's been a long week. And I'm going to make a backup actually first. Oh wow. There it is, Creative Vending. And the quest. First thing we have to do, of course, is duplicate the vending itself. There we go. So we have infinite, and we can just apply these to all these drawers. And we now have infinite of all of those items. Not that it actually matters, of course, since, yeah, we're basically finished with the pack. So now that I'm actually finished the pack, I want to go through some of the things to consider maybe if you're thinking about playing this, or if you've maybe just started. So let's just start from the beginning. Omnifactory is a really well put together experience with active pack developers and focuses a lot around automation. I think the first time I played GregTech, I really didn't enjoy or understand the playstyle, so I was going about things all wrong. This pack does an excellent job of guiding you through what is important to focus on through the use of the quest book. I should also mention that I played the development version of the upcoming 1.3 update for the pack, which is quite different to the version you'll find on Curse. This is an important thing to note, as a lot of the things I'll be talking about aren't the same in the release version. You can find the dev version on the GitHub page, and the Omnifactory Discord is a really good place to ask for installation instructions for the dev version, which you'll find on GitHub. I'll try and link it below. So the pack starts you off by default with the Lost Cities dimension world generation, which honestly is something that put me off the first time I looked at this pack. However, this world gen is not required, and in fact I didn't spend more than the first few hours of playtime here. Instead I built my base in the Void world. This is accessible through one of the first quests in the quest book, and you can freely teleport between the Lost Cities and Void Dimension at any time. The Lost Cities do give some very convenient early game loot such as glowstone and quartz, as well as some interesting loot from chests. Another interesting thing about this pack is, after around 10 hours, depending on how fast you're going and what you're focusing on, you'll no longer need to make any trips back to the Lost Cities to go mining. In fact, I think I've only spent around 5 minutes of actual game time away from my base in the Void Dimension, after around the first 10 hours of gameplay. Of course you don't have to build in the Void, you can build in the overworld if you like. It is all just preference. I personally really like Minecraft caving and mining, but if you're someone who doesn't, or just focuses on base building, then it's a really good aspect that you don't actually have to mine after the first few hours. Instead, the game will reward you with Omnicoins as a currency for completing quests, and it mostly gives access to some ores and saplings. You mostly just use the coins in the early game to get some rare ores that you haven't found yet in the world, or to boost some of your resource supply. There are other ways of generating resources a little later on too. As you progress through the various GregTech tiers, different mods become available, and deep mob learning plays a major role in the pack. It's used all throughout the game, and you're going to want to learn this mod as you'll be expanding and upgrading your simulations and loot fabricators all throughout the pack. It's tuned to be very powerful and easy to use, and I grew to really like this. It can allow you to generate resources very easily and is the primary way you'll be generating basic metals such as iron and gold, as well as some more uncommon things like prismarine and dragon's breath, at least until you get creative tank. I'm not going to go too in depth with all the mods in the pack, I just want to give a general overview of the progression. So after you start to generate some power using the steam turbines, you'll want to quickly swap out to numismatic dynamos. You can power the dynamos using the diamonds you can generate from DML, and this largely removes the need to worry about power until the mid to late game. I think this is a good aspect, as it means you can focus on all the other automation required to progress. There is always something else to automate. Nuclear craft also plays a fairly large role in the game, as a handful of the nuclear fuels are required to progress and craft things like sonarium. Nuclear craft fission can also be a nice power generation source once you reach that point, around IV tier, and with access to sonarium you can craft the processing array. This is a new GregTech multi-block and acts as a way to have multiple machines condensed into one 3x3. I loved these things and spammed them all over the place once I had access to them. It's a really nice addition to the game and a new feature in the dev version. Applied Energistics is also prevalent in the pack and is relatively cheap once you get past MV. I always enjoy playing with Applied Energistics, and it's a very powerful mod, and by default has channels disabled, which is quite nice to work with. I also used the Trousers edition of AE2, which I believe is integrated by default in the newest dev versions of the pack. And you could say this pack is split in three. The first I would categorise is before you get Applied Energistics. The second is after you get some infrastructure and auto-crafting set up. This actually did take me quite some time, but the pack really takes off and was a ton of fun after this point. And the last sort of era is post-creative tank. The tank is the first creative item you'll make, and unlike another pack such as Enigmatica 2, there's a significant amount of gameplay after you reach the point you can craft this item. Even though you have infinite fluids, and therefore infinite of most resources, you're still required to make a lot of infrastructure to craft all the creative items. So this is definitely not a short experience, and will give you many hours of fun and a little bit of frustration. So overall, I absolutely recommend playing this pack, and I'm going to just finish off with a bit of a base tour, and kind of chat about some of the things I liked and didn't like about this particular playthrough. So if you've been following this series, you might already know that I basically rebuilt this whole base after Creative Tank, which is quite the undertaking, and I don't regret it at all, but it was definitely fun, although it did add a lot of extra hours onto the already long pack that this is. And it's also very different to the style I've done in my Enigmatica series. I actually do really like this a lot more than the Enigmatica base. And I would say overall the lag has not been too bad, other than like the last little bit where I could definitely feel a difference with all of these passive systems running. But in general the pack is very well optimized and I really didn't have any issues with it. I really like the way this room turned out, to be honest, and I like the way the assembly lines look in here. I kind of wish I had added a few more just to balance it out, but yeah, this got the job done. I know now this doesn't give a perfect round robin the way I've got these set up with these item interfaces. It doesn't actually round robin between all of these things, but yeah, it was a bit late in the game to change it, so I just left it. But that's something to keep an eye on if you're going to copy this. The setup I have here does not perfectly round robin the on-demand crafts between all of these assembly lines. And I'm quite happy that I managed to actually finish all of the building in here. I didn't obviously do all of the exterior, that would have been a bit crazy. And I think it's now time to move on, but yeah, I really enjoy this microminer system, as I've stated before. I think this is a really good way of generating resources other than just mining. And I like the fact that you don't have to spend a long time mining. Yeah, I personally really like this trade for resources. It adds a lot of complexity to the game. Well, maybe complexity maybe isn't the right word, but it adds a lot of depth, and you have to think about the ways you're going to generate resources that aren't available through DML. So I really like the microminer aspect of the game. Here we have our applied energistics thing. This was downstairs before, this is just tucked away in the corner here, just as a place to put it. And then we come upstairs to our processing array room / blast furnaces. This turned out quite a bit bigger than I thought it would be. And yeah, we also have the vacuum freezer, the implosion compressor, and 2 multi-smelters. These blast furnaces are for things you can't fluid solidify, like the flux electrum, some of the heavy plating, mana infused ingots, some more heavy plating and silicon bulls, as well as crystal chips from the exquisites. And then I don't even know how many processing arrays this is. I've set up so many of these things. I can set them up in like 10 seconds now, but yeah, I love these multi-blocks. And once again, I do think this room turned out quite nice with all the conduit facades and things on it. It's quite hard though when you're planning out rooms, and especially if you haven't played the pack before, to like decide how much space to leave. So that is a constant struggle that I've felt throughout the whole game, is like, how much space am I actually going to need for all of this stuff? Even like the fluid solidifiers, I've run out of space a few times. But yeah, this room is for creative fluids, that we have fluid storage buses on there, as well as fluid solidifiers, and then these 2 central columns here are for double machines, so like for example a lathe from a fluid solidifier to make rods. And all of these is creative tank into ingots and blocks. As you can see, there's a lot of recipes here. And yeah, I like the way this room looks, although it is one of the laggiest rooms for FPS. But yeah, this is super satisfying to set up stuff like this. And then coming through here, we have the tree farm, which I could have probably turned off ages ago, as well as a cow farm, which has changed a few times from different animals. And then we have the atomic reconstructor here to make the actual additions items, as well as 2 extra utilities enchanters for on-demand crafts. And this brings us back to the interface room, where we have our storage drawers, or storage drives I mean, as well as our molecular assemblers. We have 6 of these identical setups. I think these are 3 deep, yeah. And then we have just some crafting CPUs, which probably in hindsight could have been a bit larger to handle some of the bigger crafts, but I just broke them up. And I guess we have 2 more over here. And these drawers here are all from the old base, like the old platform. These are all shrouded or hidden. And then we have some more applied energistics automation here with a painting machine for facades, an extra atomic reconstructor for manual use, a chisel, and something for lava and water. But yeah, there's not much else in this room. However, next up down these stairs is our DML setup, which has been expanded several times. And I do really like the use of DML in this pack. It is very, very powerful. But don't underestimate the amount of dragon layer data you're going to need. It's like hundreds of these things, so I'm curious actually how many iterations some of these things have run, like 41,000 for this. I suspect there's one even higher than that. Maybe like one of the first ones we set up, 42,000, 41,000, yeah. Many, many iterations of these. And these all feed into these drawers, which are accessed via the ME system. And then opposite this, we have our loot fabricators. These have changed a few times, and I've expanded this room quite a number of times, especially over the last week, for things like dragon layer data and impossible realm data. And then the outputs from here just go into these drawers. To fuel these simulation chambers, we make pulsating polymer clay in these processing arrays here. Again, this is something I've rebuilt many, many times over the course of the game, at different tiers, and then eventually in processing arrays. And then as we come out our DML room, I'll go over to the left-hand side where we have our fusion crafting setup. I really like the way this room turned out as well, and I did end up having to use these pillars, as there was a few cases where these items could block the middle crafters. And yeah, once again, in hindsight, I probably should have expanded this a bit more, as this was quite a big bottleneck for things like dislocators. I did actually add a few more dislocator passive recipes on this, as well as the wyvern cores. But this probably should have been at least double in size. I mean, double the amount of fusion setups, that is. And then over here we have our extended crafting room. And this was a bit of an interesting setup for microminers. This was something I designed on my own without using any crafting cards. That's something I wanted to do, just to avoid the lag. So this crafts tier 8s as well as tier 7 microminers. And then we have the tier 2s being crafted here, and the tier 1s are in the room next door. And then all of these crafters are for on demand, using packaged auto. I really like the packaged auto implementation in this. It's very, very easy to use, and yeah, it makes these extended craftings less of a pain when you have access to this mod. But I think I probably should have made this room a bit smaller, to be honest. But again, it's a matter of space. You just don't know how much space you're going to need. And conversely, this room probably should have been a bit bigger. This was for all of the crafters making passive items. Most of this stuff is for microminers. And we have more capability here, which I didn't end up using. Same on this side. And then all of these are the GregTech machines at various tiers. These have moved 3 or 4 times over the course of the game. But again, most of these things are just for things that we don't need super quick. A lot of the stuff is in the processing arrays, but the things that we don't need particularly quickly, we just put in these single block machines. And yeah, that brings us out and back into the main intersection of the base. And the last part we haven't looked at yet is this room up here for RF machines. Most of the stuff is for Ender IO machines. So we have things like the prescient crystals, flight control units. I put my compactors here, as well as things for making snowballs. And then I also have the red coal. Oh yeah, something that you should definitely set up like ASAP is this red coal, because you need a lot of this stuff for the creative items, so get that going like as soon as you can. Basically, I had red coal going from like MV tier, and then we have some phytogenic insulators here for mostly chorus. I use this for, but yeah, that's more or less the finished base, and that more or less wraps this up. So if you have any feedback or anything like that, let me know. But I think this is where we're going to wrap it up for today. Again, I've really enjoyed this mod pack, probably a lot more than Enigmatica did, which I didn't think I would. But yeah, it's a very, very fun, well put together experience. As for what's next on the channel, I'm actually not too sure, as I don't have a lot of time, and I don't really want to start something I can't finish. So I still haven't decided on that yet. But for the last time from our Omnifactory base, thank you again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you soon for whatever is next.